Well, greetings there, prop fans. It's Tony here from Caveman Props, and I'm here. I'm back doing in the office for a new run of my podcast and the Prop Talks. And I'm here. I've got a wonderful guest we're going to speak to today. Who's not only worked in props, he's also worked in costumes as well. So we're going to find out a little bit more about his work in this industry in that. So, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, my guest for this evening, Pierre Bohanna. Sorry.
Bohanna.
Welcome. Thanks for agreeing to talk to us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for asking me to join you. Yeah.
No worries. So, basically, we just want to get an idea of how you basically got into the industry that you're working in, like props and costumes for film and TV.
It's a long, convoluted story that often takes run out before I finish it, but I'll try and be as short as I can. But I I I was kind of slightly exposed to the industry as a child because my father not initially he was a car designer by by trade and by original. He worked in the motor racing industry in the 60s and uh, and while he was working in that industry, he worked for a while for a company called Ford Penske's, and Ford Penske's built all the running gear for the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang cars. So he met a couple of art directors while he was there, and several years later, I mean a good decade later, excuse me, he bumped into one of them again, and he just finished a car project, or several car projects, and was sort of in between projects, and this guy was a guy called Peter Lamont. He was supervising art director on The Spy Loved Me, and asked him if he could make a few pieces for them. And so he ended up doing things like I don't know if you remember, there was a super tanker interior that had these three massive, the main baddies had this colossal super tanker that used to eat submarines and things like that. Anyway, the interior set had as part of lots of details that the old man built, including this giant globe that he made. Anyway, he kind of got sucked into that industry, and I remember I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I remember going around that set and seeing that set and kind of being slightly exposed to that kind of world. So my father did that for a few years, and then actually came back out of that again and started got commissioned to build a car for a famous American basketball player that he'd met on Conan the Destroyer, I think it was. Anyway, so by that point, weirdly, I was sort of in my mid-teens as he was starting to that project and moved down to Poole in the in Dorset. And I was what I did my A levels, and then I was thinking about colleges and things like that. I was talking to my dad, and in the discussions, I was just like, oh, you know what, I'd really like to just I was just pretty ragged out by kind of academic education. I just wanted, and he said, why don't you just take a year off, come down and stay with me, come work for me for a little bit, and then you can decide what college you want to do. And Bournemouth has got a great art college. I was toying with going there and things like that. Um, so I went down and started on this car project and just working with some guys that were doing all the pattern, the body butts and things like that. And within 4 weeks, I felt I learned more than I had done in like 3 or 4 years. It just rang, and I kind of just being involved in making something and the physicality and just fell in love with it. So I I uh, I did start looking at college, but never really actually got around to doing it. Just started making things, and I worked on that car project that carried on for about a year and a half, and then we did a prototype sort of dory, which was like it's a tender boat basically that the Marines tested, and then I went worked off for a boat builder, and I thought I was going to be a boat builder for a while, and then and then I independently moved up to London and got a job making giant 3D displays like telephones, and it was with a company that did that sort of thing, the telephones, and it was Maura Farrell's old signwriting division that had been sold off, and giant whiskey bottles. They seem to be constantly going up to Glasgow, installing massive perspex whiskey bottles and play on hoardings and in horizontal rain. And yeah, and then uh, actually, for one of my dad's friends, he phoned me up one weekend. He said, "Oh, could you come and give us a hand? I'm working for this company in Putney, and they're doing this architectural job, and it's running out of time, and they're just going to work over the weekend. And I just need some spare hands. So could you come and give us a hand?" So I did that, and on the Monday, the lady who ran it phoned me up and said, "We've got some junior positions here, or a junior position. Would you be up for coming and joining us?" And I said, "Yeah," because it was double the money I was earning. So it was £4 instead of £2 an hour. That's how crazy they were throwing the money around there. So I went and joined it. It was a company called Astor Hotels, and they were one of the first independent sort of model maker sort of effects companies, one of the sort of generic companies that sort of lots of them based around London at that time. But it was really the first, and Alistair had cut his teeth doing monsters for Doctor Who and things like that. He was kind of a sculptor, raw colour sculptor, and anyway. So, and it was a time, in the 80s, which was a big boom for TV commercials. So he was doing lots and lots of TV commercials. Um, uh, and so I went and worked there, and that's really how I kind of ended up, I suppose, in the industry. So I sort of restarted cutting my teeth there, doing mostly TV commercials, but like Duckham's motor oil and lots of Cadbury's chocolate commercials and loads of stuff, but all wonderfully in camera. Then we were very lucky to kind of to be able to experience doing stuff in that way. And so I did that for a couple of years and ended up while I was there started running jobs, and then just and then really the guy saying you really should go freelance. I went freelance, and then when you go freelance, you just go job by job. So I started doing TV stuff. I worked on Spitting Image. I did a series of Spitting Image, and then did a lot of stuff for Hat Trick Productions, a bit of Father Ted stuff, and a guy called Clive Anderson used to make a lot of his stuff and things like that. And then jobbing around, and then got asked to set up a prop making department for Titanic, and so set up and ran up in the UK, although because Titanic was originally going to be filmed in Southampton, but then they moved the whole production out to Mexico. So we just made a load of stuff and containerized, but it was all the like details on the main bridge, and we made like 300 exterior light fittings and table dressing and all these amazing details, radiator covers, and all historically correct. And that was the first film job I really ran. And then I did Judge Dredd, did prop making there, and through that I got onto Phantom Menace, and then just started jobbing, occasionally running stuff, occasionally working on benches and things like that. And then eventually got asked to set up a department on Harry Potter, prop making department on Harry Potter, and yeah, and there you go. And then that's we did 10 years of that, and then since then we've been doing during that we've got I halfway through doing a series of films. We used to do films in between as well. It wasn't all the time. Got asked to set up a department to make to be what we call costume effects. But the costume supervisor on Dark Knight asked me whether I could have a look at and see about making the Batsuit on Dark Knight. So I through just discussions, classically Batsuits up to that point have always been made by essentially people that worked in the creature department, and phenomenally talented people, but they have a particular way of going about things. And I'd aired opinions as I say, well, I really wouldn't make this suit like that. I'd make it in a different way. And the techniques that we were using for certain aspects of the prop making. So we just approached it in a different way, and it just became a thing. And then so it was a great opportunity really to be able to sort of change change the aspects of how that suits. So that was a big crux point for me, and also I think generally for costumes like that as well. People were sort of, it's always good to think about things in a different way. So yeah, so anyway, so do that, and then really since Potter, I've just been bouncing between those two trades of prop making and what we call costume effects. And here I am, old and haggard and worn out by it all, but still smiling.
You must really enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's of course I do. It's in the sense of, yes. I mean, it's I love making things. Really, it's that's the thing that got me out. But films are are they're not. A lot of people have their primary passion is film. A lot of people come into it with the aspect of and a lot of people, work colleagues I have, and a lot of people I work for, want to make films, and I want to make films as well. I love film, but the thing I love about films is the opportunities of what you're asked to produce. I love making things. I love the opportunity of the challenge of having an idea, a blank sheet of paper, and figuring it out. The ultimate fact box, is sketches and things like that, just ideas and developing ideas and how to incorporate into what it has to do, and all the challenge of doing those sort of things physically. And that's where my passion is. So it's, in films the stuff you make for films are the ultimate follies, really. Yeah, that's why I'm here, I think.
You obviously mentioned that you worked on Titanic and introduced survivors, etc. So, how important is it that you, when you work on something like that, you get the details correct? Because there's always someone about people trying to go, that didn't quite do it like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the internet has opened up a whole world of people that you're not interested in their opinion about, aren't you? Really, just sort of, yeah. I mean, the Titanic was amazing because the reference was so, there was such good reference you could work with and discover, and the art department was thoroughly indulging itself in trying to do something that was so to render it as well as it could. I mean, but I remember we made lots of light fittings, and we got a drawing through that was taken off a really quite rusty, obviously classic black and white picture of a very decorative wall sconce. It was a 3-armed wall sconce that was off on the first class corridors, and was sort of used for that. And a guy I was working with where we were doing it, he was working on something else, but I was talking about it, and he goes, "Oh, there's a really good shop in Soho that kind of, it's a funny old place, but it does lots of that kind of those kind of period fittings." And he said, "It's just like, I can't remember, it was a Brewer Street or something like that." He said, it might be worth just popping up there and see if they've got something similar that we could modify and make, just rather than start from all completely from scratch. There's something that we could make in a mold and cast from. So I jumped on a train and went up. Went up to this place and walked along this street, and there's classic Soho street, lots of funky shops and things like that. And then, like some weird time window, there's this there was this shop, sort of, and it was a whole building, but just a classic Victorian shop, but like literally from 100 years ago. It was all black. All the paint was falling off. The window was all kind of smoked and covered in thing, and this cranky old door, and it's really weird, and around all these frou sort of coffee bars and God knows what else. So I went into the door, and little bell and things, and went through the door, and there was, even though it was a shop that sold lights, there was only one light on, hanging from the middle of the ceiling, a sort of unshaded sort of electrical bulb, and this funny little office in the corner, and the place was crammed full of light fittings, chandeliers, freestanding lamps, but all old stuff, all old dusty sort of. But so yeah, sort of. Anyway, this head popped out from this office and asked, said, "Hello, how can I help you?" The old boy in there, and I said, "I'm looking out, I'm trying to find a wall sconce, some that looks something like this that we can maybe use for, you know, for what we're making." And I showed him the pictures, and he goes, "I'll tell you what, why don't you just have a wander around, give me 10 minutes and come back and I'll see if I can find anything in our records." So I went through this little door and I went up the stairs, and this place was like some weird, strange sort of TARDIS place. It was like something out of Potter. It just a cranky, bendy old stairs and loads of little rooms just full of light, just light fittings, and the place seemed to go on and on and on. It must have been about 5 floors of it. And I came back down, sort of found a couple of things. And he goes, "Oh, come here." I said, I went into this office, and he had this big old leather ledger, and there's loads of them. And he opened, and he goes, "I think I might be able to help you here, son." And he said, "Look at this." And he showed me a picture, and it was like a drawing illustrated, and it was the lamp. And he goes, "We made 150 of these. 130 went on the boat. I've got 6 left." So he had the original lamp
Nice.
we were looking for. Just like, oh my God. Yeah, can I have, I'll have all 6. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah. So
So
funny that was
finding something like that must be a real gem when you look at the same. When you look at the same that's similar, found the exact ones as well.
yeah, well, found the supplier that supplied the originals and still had some in stock. It was just like, yeah, yeah. But I mean, sadly, that place is gone, and they time takes all that, more and more takes those kind of places away, which is sad. When I was young and running around London and buying stuff and running around, it's just amazing what used to be around. Places that just sell buckles and sort of East London, and it was full of amazing tiny little shops that frankly probably mostly have gone nowadays. But there you go. Such as
Do you find yourself, this is something that I do, you end up with quite like a collection of odd pieces, bits around that you think you might use at some point or another?
yeah, well, being a bloke, yeah, of course you got loads of stuff that's really important in your loft that you haven't looked at for the last 20 years, haven't you? Just and you make stuff, I make it drives my wife up the wall. Just like, more stuff for you to dust, darling. Uh, yeah, I have to say, I went through a period. The last 10 years, I think I've been decluttering my life because you come to realize that you know, you have to let some things go, don't you? Yeah, my father, God bless him, said in life all you really need is a cigarette lighter, for in his case, a cup of coffee and a pencil and paper. That's all you really need. Everything else is superfluous. So I kind of agree
Sounds
in a
like a very
way.
wise man.
He's a very wise, stupid man, my father. Yeah. Bless him.
When you approach projects, do you prefer something um, like when like the Titanic, where you have physical reference for it, or it's like you did the costume work on Ready Player One? And
Mm.
obviously, although that's based on a novel, there was no physical reference, so you could let the kind of imagination go. Do you prefer being able to use your imagination or working to try and create something that once existed at the time?
Yeah, well, I think everything is the same in a certain aspect, but in the sense of how it's approached. Because you start off with the first question, the blank piece of paper, and the what is this, and even for something that has strong reference, say like the stuff from Titanic or conceptual stuff that you're contributing and generating a world. It all starts with that. But also films have especially on those creative things, there's a system to generate that, and you're contributing to that. So I mean, Potter, by example, had an amazing art department and an incredible production designer, Stuart Craig. Just he was really what the character of the film and what you see is it all kind of came from him, but it didn't come from him in a sense directly. It was the rest of us really rendering what he thought of the world. So we all contributed with ideas and processes and designs and all different aspects from it and facilitate. But we were always bouncing off his approvals. So that was, and that's mostly the case with that. It's just really you're working with the filmmakers and the senior designers, if that's the best way to put it. And each film has its own character as far as that how that's organized. But yeah, you always
Imagine a Harry Potter with like the Harry Potters. That would be um, um, you want everything to try and fit in that world. Although you're creating everything that has to look as if it would fit within that
yeah.
world.
One of the most impressive things, and it's weird. I don't think I've really experienced it to that extent since. Is just the refinement in all aspects of that, and that does it goes back to really the attitude of Stuart and Stephanie McMillan, his set decorator, really of just like we spend an enormous amount of time on details and refining those details and developing those details and debating them and having things made and going no, maybe it needs to be this and that. It sounds indulgent, but it was their their talent lay in that refinement and the way that they do it, and you can just tell. A lot of films nowadays, and this, of course, everything has a price, and there's only so much in it. But a lot of films just don't, I think, don't understand the value of allowing things to put making that investment and developing it, so that the world you're generating is convincing. It's not just just do any old thing and just knock it out there. It's just like it doesn't work. Your eye doesn't, even a layman doesn't really. You've been convinced by stuff and haven't been convinced by others, and it's just about that that refinement really.
Yeah. So
It doesn't come instantly.
it's like spending the time and effort to create something detailed and saying that it's on someone's desk that would only be seen for a matter of seconds. Some people might come and say, "Oh, you can put anything."
Yeah, which in
You
some
want it
sense,
to look good because otherwise, if it doesn't, then it looks completely out of place.
yeah, it's got to sit in the world, and and a lot of that stuff you can find. I mean, Stephanie was an incredible set decorator, and stuff that you used to find and sit there. And I often used to go with her, and we'd talk about stuff, or I suggest things, and often she'd say yes, and other times she'd just go no, no. You just like, but you trusted her to understand where that her taste was incredible. So yeah, it's just having that talent and that confidence really. Um, yeah, it's storytelling, isn't it? It's storytelling. You've got to make the worlds.
When it comes down to saying like you're given a prop that needs to be made, what's your process on it? So it's nothing that's ever been seen before. You've got to create a prop that's not working. What kind of process do you go through?
The reality is a process of development, and often I mean, depending on what, especially if it's a key prop, then there's an enormous amount of work. It doesn't land like a golden egg. It's often it will be discussed at the primary level. Production designer, set decorator, directors, producer would, if it's mentioned in the script, the idea, and often a concept artist will be commissioned to develop the idea of it. And I'll certainly be involved in that prop making process, so I can try and show, try and I might do my own suggested designs as well. But it's all throwing stuff in the pot to really to try and get the best thing out of it. So it's just a grouping of ideas, and then as that boils down, as that kind of debate between all the main parties sort of goes on, then you get to something that starts to focus into what good ideas, etc. So at that point, sometimes you will do either another concept, or you'll get an art director and draftsman that will draw a kind of formal drawing of the piece. Again, I'll work with that designer to just talk about material. At that point, I'll be researching materials and making suggestions of that kind of thing and processes, etc.
It's
And
something
then
that
and then
kind
we'll
of
go.
goes backwards and forwards.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And then
So,
then really we'll make the first one, the prototype. Um and that will either be approved or changed, um uh and then eventually you get to the one. And then of course you've got one. So, and then I don't know, let's say ones by example, and you go, right, okay, they're gonna appear in this is gonna appear in 50 scenes. They're going to be rolling down hills and bump, so we need to make repeats, we need to make rubberized ones, we need ones with lights in the end. So then you crank into a process of manufacture with all of those requirements in mind to service the film. So it becomes a different thing. So often what I'll try and do, if I know that the piece is going to be intense like that, then I'll try and control the design to make it possible, or less, that whole, again,
it's
money
got
is
to
always
be
so you're
practical.
trying to.
So obviously you do quite vary between costume and prop work. Which kind of area do you enjoy the most?
um it's difficult to they are different disciplines, but it's very difficult to sort of, in a favoritism way, sort of choose swing one way to the other. I mean, the nice thing about costumes, especially, we call ourselves costume effects, so we're doing hero costumes and character costumes and all that, so it's sort of, and armor and, sort of technical. I mean, things like the stuff we did on Star Wars, it's not standard stuff that a costume department would make. So it's really the kind of, we're almost like engineers in a way, as well as developing, bringing processes and ideas in that way, and materials and etc. So it's so there's part of that's not, and of course you get to work with the people that are wearing them a lot more, and it's a different department, there's different creative aspects and ways, and you say interesting people, etc. But after a while, even though there's great variation, there's a kind of similarity in what you're doing. So it's yeah, it's nice to be able to bounce between the two disciplines, really, because I think one refreshes the other. If you're doing it for a while, it's nice to come out and do a bit of prop making, just to recharge your enthusiasm battery. If you're making rubberized trousers for 4 years, eventually it kind of wears a bit thin, even though it's really cool stuff. Mm.
I think that's you kind of got that nice balance work between the two.
Yeah, yeah.
You're
I mean,
not stuck in this one area.
yeah. I never really know what I'm doing 2 months ahead, which is I love. It's just like, yeah, just keep saying yes throughout your whole life, and it's amazing where it will take you. Yeah.
Um, Obviously, I have to ask the question: is there anything on the horizon that you're working on at the moment that you're allowed to talk about?
Yes and no. Oh, I'll always
Obviously.
talk about it. I mean, yeah, we um, yeah, we're no, I mean, the film industry, to be honest, right at this very moment is gone through a few months of quite severe upheaval. The strikes and etc. And other elements of it's quite disrupted. There's a lot of stuff that is stalling at the moment, but as things are starting to warm up and start to happen again. Um, we just finished on Sonic 3, which has gone through that. So we've been making stuff for Jim Carrey for Robotnik, which has been good fun. Totally different to normal. So that's good fun. Nice to work with him as well. supposedly he's been retiring for the last 4 years, so he might retire. This might be the one that finally gets him to retire. And but we've got we're doing a spacesuit, a very very odd spacesuit, hopefully for Ryan Gosling for a production he's in. That's just happening at the moment. It's a Netflix film, and then we've got hopefully they might well be doing another Robert Pattinson Batman, I think. So that's starting in the second half of the year. And then there's some other twangs on, other inquiries, so to speak. So people are talking about other stuff. So yeah, it's a sort of two.
You don't want to jinx those ones. Just
I don't want to jinx anything. Yeah. I can bug it on myself. I don't need any help. Mm.
well, I think that's at the moment that's really all we have time for. I'd
Mm.
just like to say a big thank you for giving us your time
Oh,
and
no, it's a
and
pleasure.
obviously talking about this wonderful industry that we enjoy
Mm.
making stuff and fun and get to have fun with it as well.
No, exactly. I'm admiring the pieces you got behind you, by the way. You've made some
Oh,
lovely, you know, it looks from here, it looks great, which is what prop making's all
it kind
about.
of goes up a little bit further there, and there's lots of stuff over here.
No,
It's
it's good.
constantly being added to all the time.
Well done. That's good. That's keep up the passion. It's good stuff.
Thank you very much. Well, as I say, thank you very much for your time,
Mm.
and it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks for asking, and Lewis, good luck in the future. Hopefully, our paths will cross again.
Thank you very much. Well, there you go, guys. I hope you've enjoyed that talk today. And obviously, please like, please subscribe. Obviously, drop us your comments. Let us know what you thought. And hopefully, I will see you all guys in the next one soon.